else going?
Well, I mean, if you look at a whole pattern of speech and you look at a whole deterioration of his syntax and the way he's talking, look, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to clinically evaluate him, but just as a person looking at it as a voter, you're saying, okay, the guy's obviously in mental decline.
President Trump's former communications chief is accusing the administration officials of turning a blind eye to the president's mental health.
Those comments come just weeks after Anthony Scaramucci said he thought Republicans should consider backing another candidate in the 2020 presidential election. And he joins us now via Skype to discuss those recent statements and so much more. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So what happened, Anthony? You loved the president. You wrote a book about him. What went south for you?
Did you read the book?
I did not. I'm sorry to say.
Like, the thing is, the funny thing about the book is I wrote a very balanced book. I mean, you know, I disagreed with the president on the child separation. I disagreed with the address of the intelligence communities, particularly denunciating them in front of Vladimir Putin. I wrote an op-ed for The Hill, which I know you guys are affiliated with, describing the press not being the enemy of the people. All of that was in the book. So, you know, the president.
But you worked for him. You were obviously a vehement defender of him at times. I did Fox News panel with you where you were up there defending him. So what changed?
No question. So I'm a loyal Republican. I like the president. This is nothing personal to the president. As we were talking about before we got on the air, I was fired after 11 days. Stayed very loyal to the president's agenda. I have no problem with being fired or anything like that. But I'm just looking at the landscape of what is going on. The red line for me was the full-blown racism with the 4 congresswomen. And so he got upset with me, decided to go after me on Twitter after that. That's fine, but he's acting crazy. And so if you want to pretend that he's not acting crazy after the Sharpie incident, after calling President Xi and Jerome Powell enemies of the United States, and after the litany of things that he's doing over the last 3 to 6 weeks, we can pretend that. But I think that's going to be very, very dangerous for the United States over the next 4 to 5 years.
Anthony, I think the problem that some people are having.
Not change. The president is changing, and he's evolving and worsening every single day.
So, Anthony, I think that the problem that people have on this is that it seems that you didn't really come out against him until he started tweeting about you. It seemed to be much more of a personal thing. Yes, you condemned his statements and all that, but supporting a contender, really going after him on cable news, it seemed to be a personal vendetta on your part. So how do you explain, what is the exact moment that you said, I'm not going to support President Trump anymore? Was it when he tweeted about you?
Well, listen, I mean, when he's tweeting about me, it's one thing. Remember, he also tweeted about my wife, who is a private citizen. Okay, so he may not have early stage dementia, but he's definitely got early stage fascism. Okay? He's going after private citizens like my wife, who's got nothing to do with the political process. He's attacking people like Deborah Messing. He's bullying his private citizens. So when you say, what was it? Again, I answer that question. The red line for me was the full-blown racism against the 4 congresswomen. I'm a Republican. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with their policies, but they do have standing to live in the United States. 3 of them were born here. 1 was naturalized as a citizen. All 4 were democratically elected to the Congress. So when he's telling them to go back to the country that they came from, that is a long-standing 150, 200-year-old racist trope. They used it against my grandmother 100 years ago. I spoke out against that. When I was in Bill Maher,
But Anthony, a lot of us look at Charlottesville as an example, where you had literal Nazis marching in the streets with their torches saying Jews will not replace us, and the president comes out and says fine people on both sides. How is that not a red line? He hasn't, in my view, he's been the same while he was running, during that moment, when he was telling the congresswomen to go back to where they came from. This was none of it surprising.
I mean, and on the private citizens point, I mean, he went after Ted Cruz's wife in the primary. I mean, this is baked in, right?
Okay, guys, you're gonna have to let me finish my. So, I mean, I get the questions. I understand the need for the question. You got to let me at least finish, though. So let's start with Charlottesville. I was fired on the 31st The Charlottesville incident happened maybe 10 or 11 days later. I was on George Stephanopoulos' show the day after it, denouncing the president's remarks. Okay. And so, as I have said to people, you could like 9/10 of what somebody's doing and dislike 3/10 of it, if you will, or I'm sorry, 9/12 of it and dislike 3/12 of it, and not be a non-supporter. But when you're crossing the line continuously and the cauldron is boiling over, which again, everybody has a different red line. And trust me, there will be more Republicans leaving the Trump camp over the next 3, 6 to 9 months as the president's condition worsens. And hopefully we can create an off-ramp for those people as well. So for me, you could be critical of me, and I will own the criticism that perhaps I should have left his support after Charlottesville. But the red line for me was the 4 congresswomen. Mm-hmm. And to finish my last point, which I think is an important one, I'm with Bill Maher in post-production at a post-production party 3 or 4 weeks ago after his show. And he says to me, well, you're pretty supportive of the guy. I said, listen, I'm supportive of the guy. I cannot defend the racism. He said, well, you think he watched the show? I said, I have no idea. I said, but I'll tell you what, if he attacks me after this show, I am absolutely done with the guy, because it's an example of full-blown demagoguery, where a person like me that can like economic policies, can like directionally what's going on with deregulation, didn't defend it in Charlottesville, didn't defend it with the 4 congresswomen, the racism. If he starts denunciating me, then he is a full-blown demagogue. It is literally like Joe McCarthy, okay, and Roy Cohn got together and had a baby, and the baby was Donald J. Trump running the country. Donald J. Trump doesn't want you 12 out of 12. He wants you 13 out of 12, okay? Right. And that is full-blown demagoguery. And I'm sorry, I am not going to accept that as an American who loves the country, who's lived a large American dream. So if you guys are upset with me that my red line took me a little longer, there's 62.8 million people that voted for him. We have the risk now that he could get reelected. And so real patriots that have some level of courage in the Republican Party are going to continue to step out and denounce what the guy is doing.
So, Anthony, tell us a little bit about it. You've floated this idea of a political action committee. Which candidates do you intend on supporting? Are you supportive of Joe Walsh's candidacy and other efforts in order to go after President Trump?
So I don't know Joe personally, never met him. I know Governor well personally. I like the governor a great deal. What my PAC is going to be focused on, and we're going to make an announcement mid-month about the PAC, how to donate to the PAC, et cetera. It's going to be more focused on the swing states and suburban voters, and specifically suburban women, because we have the MAGA, if you will, bully in chief. Okay, that's lighting people up left and right on his Twitter feed instead of actually running the country. And you've got a very large group of people in the country that don't like bullies. In Hollywood, as an example, the bullies never win the movies. Bullying in the United States is quintessentially anti-American. And so I'm going to be spending my time in the swing states over the next 13 months, explaining that to a very large swath of people. And if we can bring his support down in those areas, he'll lose the election, and that'll be great for the country, because you can't have a guy in the White House for another 4 or 5 years that's alone in the White House, seeking no counsel from anybody, and humiliating the country with the nonsense that he's propagating right now.
Anthony, you were also spotted at a Joe Biden fundraiser. I mean, are you considering voting for a Democrat? What are you liking about Biden?
I'm very glad you brought that up, because that was Republican operative ambushing. I was not at a Joe Biden fundraiser. I was at the Blue Wave charity event for the Greek Orthodox Church in Southampton. There were 1,000 people there. Vice President Biden came to that event to accept an award for his deceased son, Joe Biden, who had worked with that charity. He spoke for 3 minutes on the stage, and then he left. I did not see Vice President Biden there. It was not a Joe Biden fundraiser, but this is what the Republicans try to do to people like me. They tried to conflate that and say that I was at a Joe Biden fundraiser. A week earlier, I was at a birthday party at Martha's Vineyard. Secretary Clinton was there with President Clinton. They tried to say that I was affiliated with them. I was not. Clients of mine were having a birthday party that I attended. So I'm a Republican.
Do you rule out then? Do you rule out voting for a Democrat over Trump?
I'm not supporting Joe Biden. Well, I don't want to rule anything out because I'm a flexible guy and, I'm running $12 billion. You've got to be very flexible when you run money. I'm not going to rule anything out, but I am a Republican. I don't believe President Trump is going to make it to the November election. I do not think he will be the Republican nominee. And so let's see how the race shapes up. If he is the Republican nominee, I will be working to defeat him for sure, because you can't have this guy running the country for the next 4 or 5 years. Now, if you're telling me they're going to put up Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, invite me back on, and then we'll have an analytical conversation about what to do.
We certainly will have you back, sir.
Here's the thing I will tell you, okay? The country's in danger, okay? And responsible Republicans, White House staffers, it's 1 year out since the anonymous letter. Nobody wants to speak up. They're fearful of their jobs. They're fearful of making money. They're fearful of presidential bullying. Maybe he'll go after their wife or their husband, things like that. And I'm just here to tell people, not that big of a deal. Don't ever allow somebody to bully you, whether it's the president of the United States or whoever. I mean, come on, it's the United States. We know from we're a good group of people, and we know that this guy is acting abnormal. It's like literally having a dysfunctional family, United States being a family, and we have somebody at the top of the family that is not doing well mentally. So now we have to step up and we have to replace that person for the benefit of the family. And that's basically what's going to happen over the next 12 to 14 months.
Well, we appreciate you joining us very much, sir, and we'll certainly have you back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Come back and keep us updated. Thank you, Anthony.
Stop calling me sir, Sagar. I'm not.
I call everybody sir. Don't worry, it's not just you.
Coming up, what did Team Rising think of last night's climate town halls?
And we also analyze the idea of people being drawn to chaos and advancing democracies. All of this when Rising continues.